Covering Dunkirk, Fredonia, and all of northern Chautauqua County, this is WCVF 88.9 FM, The Voice.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. I am Matt Volz, a junior at Fredonia, and this is the last time that I can say that, as this is the final show of the 2025 spring semester, the sixth semester that I have had Big Blue Sports. This is the last show. The next time you hear from me on this show, I will be introducing myself as a senior at SUNY Fredonia, which is gross. But a few things to get to today, of course, as the last show is usually one of the more in-depth ones. Start talking about Fredonia sports as always. The track SUNYAC championships were last weekend. The softball team starts their SUNYAC playoff run today. We'll preview that game. We'll take a look at the NBA and NHL playoffs. My New York Knicks have a 2-0 series lead on the Boston Celtics after a Game 2 win in Boston last night. I am wearing my Knicks jersey. Yes, it is an R.J. Barrett jersey. I know he hasn't played for them in a little while, but it's the only Knicks jersey I have. The NHL playoffs as well. My Stanley Cup Finals prediction of Dallas versus Carolina is looking fairly solid right now. Unfortunately, I am going to talk about the Sabres just a little bit, making some front office moves and how there's even maybe less hope than there was before, if that was possible. The Buffalo Bandits are back in the NLL Finals, and we'll preview their finals matchup against either the Halifax Thunderbirds or the Saskatchewan Rush, as those Game 2, Saskatchewan won Game 1, Game 2 is this weekend, and as would be Game 3 if Halifax were to win Game 2. Players nominated for some individual awards. And then, as always, with the final show of the semester, I will go down the list of my top 10 sports moments of the 2024-25 school year and shout out some of our seniors, some of our graduating seniors, as well, as I always do in the last episode of the school year. So to start, we're going to talk about some Fredonia sports. And again, as I had mentioned in the intro, that the softball team's playoff run starts today. Of course, their overall record, 13-17. That doesn't exactly jump off the page, but a 10-6 SUNYAC record gets them the number 4 seed in the SUNYAC playoffs. So actually, it was just posted that, okay, so the SUNYAC playoffs, the first games will still be today. However, tomorrow's games have been moved until Saturday due to some weather we're supposed to get tomorrow. So every game that was going to be played on day 1, which is today, has been moved to Oneonta. The first game actually going on right now, the number 3 seed versus the number 3 seed taking on the number 3 seed Buff State against 6 seed Plattsburgh. That was at 10 a.m. earlier today. And the Blue Devils, their first pitch should be right about now, and the Blue Devils are taking on Oneonta. Again, that game slated to start at noon, so if it is not already underway, should be at any moment. Now, if Fredonia does win this game, their day is not over. If Fredonia wins, then they get to play the number 1 seed Cortland at 5 p.m. this evening, and the winner of the Buff State versus Plattsburgh game will play New Paltz at 3 p.m. So if the Blue Devils, if they beat Oneonta in their game that's just starting right now, and if they were to beat Cortland, which would be a hefty upset later tonight, then they would be playing on Saturday. So either way, actually, if Fredonia wins this game, they'll still be playing on Saturday. If they were to lose to Cortland, they would face whoever loses in the Plattsburgh /Buff State versus New Paltz game. That's today. That's later today. So they're either way, if they beat Oneonta, they're still going to be playing softball this weekend. So it's exciting for sure, and we'll see how far the team goes. Of course, being at Oneonta kind of is tricky, but, we'll see. And they've put together an excellent SUNYAC run. Matt's yawning again because I have been up since 7:30 this morning, and last night was up until 2 a.m. But they've put together a really solid SUNYAC run. They were supposed to play Oneonta over the weekend, but those games were actually canceled because of the weather that we got. So they haven't played each other this season, but it will be interesting to see how things play out. As for baseball, their season has come to an end. No SUNYAC playoffs for the baseball team. They ended the year with a series at Plattsburgh over the weekend. In a standalone game on Saturday, they lost 11-7. And then a doubleheader, they won the first game 10-5 and lost the second 11-6. Final record for the baseball team, 11-23 overall and 4-14 in conference play. They looked relatively solid in Florida. They won 4 of their first 5 games, but just were not able to sustain that same level of success. They had a somewhat lengthy SUNYAC losing streak that just ultimately kind of doomed them in the end. The lacrosse season has also come to an end for Fredonia. Of course, as we talked about last week, their loss in the first round of the playoffs to New Paltz. But there were 3 lacrosse players named to the all-SUNYAC teams, as Sydney Butchko, Emma Cockrell, and Cameron Jacobs were all named third-team all-SUNYAC. Butchko is over the 100. She is a 5-year player. I actually talked to her earlier this year. I was talking to her and head coach Tori Poffenberger. She'd been there for 5 years, and they kind of have a younger team. So they call, some members of the team call Sydney Grandma because she's been there for a while. But yeah, Cameron Jacobs, Emma Cockrell, and Sydney Butchko all named to the third team all-SUNYAC for women's lacrosse. Moving on to the men's and women's track teams, the men's and women's track and field teams, the outdoor track and field championships were hosted at Cortland over the weekend. The men's team overall as a team finished 6th out of 12 teams, and they did take home one winner as Cameron Sample took home the win in the long jump, and the Blue Devils 4x400 meter relay team ended up taking second. Their team of Cameron Collins, Aiden Vandenberg, Nick Marszewitz, and Cameron Sample, they took home second in the 4x400 meter relay team. Again, the men's team finishing in 6th out of 12. The women's team finishing overall in 7th place out of 12 teams. Cara Palecchia, of course, she was nationally ranked in the pole vault last year. She takes home the gold in the pole vault at this year's SUNYACs, but she wasn't alone on the podium for the Blue Devils as Skylar French took bronze in the event. So we're really starting to see a trend of some pretty good Blue Devils pole vaulters, and perhaps maybe that's something that could even be enhanced when the new track facility opens up next spring. And again, construction is underway. They are hoping to have that ready to host a meet next year. When I talked to Director of Facilities Planning Marcus Kessler, he said that really the only thing that might not be in place is the lights, because what they have to do for it, I'll give a little bit of a backstory. What they have to do for it is they need to build a separate transformer. They have to build a separate transformer for it. And right now, what the goal is to have a transformer that will power both the stadium lights, both the facility lights, and the townhouses. The current transformer that powers the townhouses isn't strong enough to power both. So they're currently building one that will be, and then that'll be installed and replace the old one. Kessler did tell me that would not have any impact on students, though. So it'll be exciting, and some renderings were actually in a recent issue of The Leader, our last issue of the semester, printed back on April 29th. So be sure to, I need to stop yawning. So be sure to check that out. And I've got a couple of pieces in there, and it's a somewhat of a longer issue. Our last issue is 48 pages instead of the typical 32. But overall for Fredonia sports, as every season now except for softball has finished up, and we'll see how softball can do. Can they stay alive and get to this weekend? We will certainly see. Well, we are going to take a short break. When I come back, going to talk about the NBA and NHL playoffs. Of course, the NHL playoffs don't include the Sabres. There's a big surprise, but we are going to be talking about the Sabres and a little bit, as well as talking about the Bandits appearing in the NLL Finals. And again, my top 10 sports moments of the year and our senior shoutouts. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports this afternoon on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. WNYF Television's current longest-running late-night talk show, A Sit Down with Brock, is coming to a close with a grand series finale. And the question on everyone's mind is, how would the host top himself this time? Get ready for even more off-the-wall banter, sharp zingers, hilarious interviews, and overall, expect the unexpected. If you're interested and don't want to miss out, tune in on Thursday, May 8th. This is tonight at 10 p.m. on the WNYF Television YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/WNYF Television. So before I continue with the show and talking about the playoffs, this is actually interesting and kind of a cool moment because I do have some breaking news to share with any listeners who are listening live who may not be aware. The fourth conclave to select the new pope has voted, and white smoke has risen above the Sistine Chapel, which means that the next pope has been elected. So anyone who is following that, it's live on literally any news channel that you can find. The white smoke is pouring out of the top of the Sistine Chapel, and the bells of St. Peter's Cathedral are ringing, which again signals that the Cardinals have chosen a new pope. This was the fourth round of the voting, and it's really kind of, no matter religion or whatever, it's just kind of an interesting historic moment, and I just happened to see that pop up as I was finishing up the break there. So a little bit of breaking news. We're not just a sports show here on Big Blue. We do lots of other things. We do lots of other things as well. So moving on to the NBA playoffs, of course, I am wearing my New York Knicks jersey today, my RJ Barrett jersey, because it's the only New York Knicks jersey that I have. The Knicks leading the Boston Celtics 2-0 in their second-round best-of-7 series. The Knicks won a very close Game 2 last night. And we'll take a look at, we'll recap the first-round series, because you haven't heard from me in a week. In the Western Conference, the number 1 seed Oklahoma City Thunder they swept the number 8 seed Memphis Grizzlies. A lot of that series wasn't really particularly close. The Thunder are a very, very good team this year. The number 4 seed Denver Nuggets defeating the 5 seed Los Angeles Clippers in 7 games. And Game 7 wasn't particularly close. The Nuggets won that game by 19 points. The number 6 seed Minnesota Timberwolves upset the 3 seed LeBron and Luka-led Lakers in a 5-game series. And the number 7 seed Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry pulls off the upset. The Warriors beat the number 2 seed Houston Rockets in 7 games. And again, their Game 7 was not particularly close either, with a final score of 103-89. In the East, we also had the top seed sweeping the number 8 seed as the Cleveland Cavaliers swept the Miami Heat. Game 4 was a final score of 138-83. Talk about a blowout. The number 4 seed Indiana Pacers defeated the 5 seed Milwaukee Bucks in 5 games, of course, winning Game 5 by 1 after the Bucks had a big lead late and were not able to hang on. And then Tyrese Halliburton's dad almost fought Giannis Antetokounmpo, which was probably not a wise choice. The New York Knicks defeated the Detroit Pistons in 6 games. Jalen Brunson, a game-winning 3 in Game 6 in Detroit to seal that series. And then the Boston Celtics defeating the 7-seed Orlando Magic in 5. The second-round series so far, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Denver Nuggets, the 1-4. That series is tied at a game apiece. Game 3 in Denver tomorrow night at 10 p.m. on ESPN. Game 2 between the the 6-7 matchup, the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Golden State Warriors. Game 2 in Minnesota tonight at 8:30 on TNT and True TV. Golden State won Game 1. Tomorrow night, Game 3 between the top seed Cleveland Cavaliers and the 4-seed Indiana Pacers in the East. Game 3 in Indiana tomorrow night at 7:30 on ESPN. The Pacers lead that series 2-0. Surprising, as Cleveland was a wagon in the East this year. And Game 3 between the Knicks and Celtics at Madison Square Garden on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. on ABC. The Knicks lead that series 2-0. A little surprising so far. Definitely surprising to see Cleveland lose games 1 and 2 at home, and same with Boston. Really, I mean, throughout the regular season, the Cavs and Celtics were the clear-cut, by far and away, top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference. So to see both of them trailing their series 2-0 after both games 1 and 2 at home is a little bit surprising. So we'll see if the Knicks and Pacers can keep it going, or if the Cavs and Celtics will come back. I, of course, am a Knicks fan, so my fingers are crossed that the Knicks do not blow this. I don't really know what to expect, though. We'll shift over to the NHL playoffs and recap the first-round series. We'll start in the Western Conference. The President's Trophy champion Winnipeg Jets. Oh, boy, was that Game 7 something against the St. Louis Blues. The Blues with a 3-1 lead in the final minutes. Winnipeg scored to cut it to 3-2. And then with 1.6 seconds left on the clock, Cole Perfetti scores to tie the game for the Jets and send it to overtime. And Winnipeg would win the game in double OT. Connor Hellebuyck was not good in this series. I got to give credit to the Blues. I mean, this was a team that was so far out of the playoff picture earlier on in the season. They make the playoffs, and they force the President's Trophy winners to double overtime in Game 7 and held a lead late in the third period. You can't really frown upon that, other than the fact that, you know, wishing from a Blues fan perspective that they would have closed it out. So the Jets are in round 2. The other series in that division, the number 2 seed Dallas Stars beating the 3 seed Colorado Avalanche in 7. That Dallas-Colorado series was a great series. And Mikko Rantanen came alive for Dallas and just tormented his former team. In the Pacific Division, the top seed Vegas Golden Knights defeated the 4 seed Minnesota Wild in 6, and the 3 seed Edmonton Oilers took down the 2 seed Los Angeles Kings in 6 as well. In the Eastern Conference, the number 1 seed Toronto Maple Leafs defeated the 4 seed Ottawa Senators in 6. Toronto wins just their second playoff series since 2004. Which is to say, in my life. The 3 seed Florida Panthers defeat the 2 seed Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games, and we'll talk a little bit about the Panthers here in a second. In the Metro Division, the number 1 seed Washington Capitals defeat the 4 seed Montreal Canadiens in 5, and the number 2 seed Carolina Hurricanes defeat the 3 seed New Jersey Devils in 5. So the second round series are already underway. There's a few games tonight, or there's 2 games tonight in the Eastern Conference. Game 2 between the Washington Capitals and the Carolina Hurricanes in D.C. Carolina won Game 1. Game 2 is tonight at 7 o'clock on ESPN. And then out in the Western Conference, Game 2 in Vegas between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers took Game 1 on the road. Game 2, puck drop, is at 9:30 tonight on ESPN. A couple of games tomorrow as well. In the Eastern Conference, Game 3 between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. Toronto leads that series 2-0, despite losing goaltender Anthony Stolarz to a rather serious concussion, it appeared. Game 3 is tomorrow night at 7 p.m. on TNT and True TV. And Game 2 in Winnipeg between the Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars is tomorrow night at 9:30 on TNT and True TV. Dallas took home game 1. So to talk about Florida just for a minute, because I really want to talk about, we'll talk about Florida. So I'm not sure what NHL fans are aware of everything with Colin Campbell. So Colin Campbell is he is in the NHL's executive office. I got to double check what his exact position is. Yeah. So Colin Campbell is he is the current executive vice president and director of hockey operations for the NHL. So Colin's son, Gregory Campbell, played in the NHL, as did Colin. And Gregory is a Stanley Cup champion. He won the Cup in 2011 as a member of the Boston Bruins. And when Campbell was on that team, fans noticed that Boston was getting an awful lot of favorable calls. And this was made even worse by the fact that supposedly, and I need to remember exactly what the deal was, and I'm going to Google it right now, but supposedly there was a memo sent out where Colin Campbell had basically told NHL refs to not penalize the teams that his son played, the team that his son played for, which is not great. I don't really know how it's so supposedly the story goes that Colin Campbell, when he was the NHL vice president, this was back in 2010 when the Bruins were in the playoffs, he sent an email. Colin Campbell sent an email to NHL brass, to the NHL, teams and executives and stuff like that. And basically, the emails revealed that not only was Colin Campbell critical of any referees who called penalties against his son, he also had a grudge against Boston Bruins forward Marc Savard that he mentioned in these emails. And one of the things that was pointed to this is when Matt Cook, who is a notoriously dirty player, when Matt Cook delivered a nasty hit to Marc Savard and injured him, Cook was not suspended by Colin Campbell, and fans kind of said, all right, he's insanely corrupt, and I kind of agree with him. So where does this relate to the Florida Panthers? So Gregory Campbell has retired from the NHL, and he now works in the Florida Panthers front office. So the discussion kickstarted again after Panthers forward Sam Bennett collided with Anthony Stolarz, the Leafs goaltender, which Stolarz sustained a significant concussion and had to be helped off the ice on a stretcher. So Sam Bennett, the NHL has said he will not be punished. There will be no repercussions for the collision. Now, I watched it briefly. I do agree that I think it was incidental contact. I don't think Sam Bennett was trying to injure Anthony Stolarz at all. But it's interesting that, again, we're having this discussion of Colin Campbell potentially interjecting the things that he wants over the values of the good of the game. I personally think that a lot of NHL leadership is corrupt. I think that Gary Bettman and Colin Campbell, Gary Bettman, Colin Campbell, George Parros, the director of player safety, I think those three should be out the door and should have been a long time ago. I have mixed feelings about Deputy Commissioner Bill Daley. Not really sure how to feel about him, to be completely honest. I feel like he's just a minion for Gary Bettman, but I think Bettman is, out of the four major North American sports, I feel very confident in saying that Gary Bettman is the worst commissioner out of the four of them. He's far worse than Adam Silver of the NBA and Roger Goodell. And I would say, even though I think Rob Manfred of Major League Baseball is also terrible, and I'm overjoyed that he's going to be gone in 4 years, I think Bettman is worse. I actually think he has been a horrible commissioner. I think the NHL could have grown far more than it has if we didn't have an incompetent moron leading the way, which is basically my thoughts and everyone's thoughts on Gary Bettman, and it's why he gets booed more than almost any other commissioner. So before I take a break, going to talk real shortly about the Sabres and the moves that Buffalo made. The Sabres brought in they said that they wanted to hire somebody with managerial experience to assist Kevin Adams in the front office. Whether that means going out and buying Terry's favorite coffee filters, I'm not really sure. But the Sabres made the decision to hire Eric Stahl. Remember Eric Stahl? He was on that 2006 Carolina team that beat Buffalo in the playoffs. Then in 2021, he came to Buffalo and didn't want to be here and played terribly, and then eventually got traded. And once he was traded to Montreal, then he actually looked like a competent NHL player again. You know, the same guy who said, I don't want to wear a Pride Night jersey because it goes against my beliefs. And I've never worn a Pride Night jersey, and I never would. And then video evidence quite literally showed that he had the year before. So obviously, I'm not a very big fan of the move. I think, I mean, I'm not going to go crazy about it because it's whatever. But the Sabres also, they want Seth Appert to have even more of a say in front office decisions, which is fun because the former coach of the Rochester Americans, who was brought in as Lindy Ruff's assistant, that wasn't Lindy's choice, by the way. He was brought in and, Seth Appert was in charge of the power play, which was absolutely terrible. And so naturally, the reward for running a god-awful power play is having more of a say in front office decisions. So, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I honestly don't think that the moves make any sense. The Sabres were also one bingo ball away from winning the draft lottery and getting the number 1 overall pick, which I honestly just kind of think is funny at this point. The Sabres are picking 9th as they've dropped down in the draft order like they do every single year. So yeah, pretty much just spinning the tires. And I'm sorry to Sabres fans, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't have any hope for next season. I don't. As long as Kevin Adams is in charge of the front office and Lindy Ruff is still not allowed to pick his own assistants, I don't think this is a good team. I think they have some solid players, but I think as long as Adams is the one at the helm and GM, I don't think they'll find success. I hope they prove me wrong, but I don't think they will, and I've kind of seen it as a Sabres fan over and over and over and over, being disappointed that you kind of know what to expect and you kind of see the warning signs. And Kevin Adams is far more of a warning sign than he is a competent NHL executive. So with that said, I'm going to take a short break. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about the team who actually knows how to put together wins that plays their home games at KeyBank Center, the Buffalo Bandits, who have advanced to the NLL Finals for the 5th straight year. Thanks for tuning in to the semester finale of Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Again, as a reminder, as the news that just broke for anyone who might be joining us, earlier in the show, news broke that white smoke has risen above the Sistine Chapel as the conclave has elected the next pope. And right now, we are pretty much just waiting to see who it is at this point, but definitely in celebratory over at the Vatican, where it is about 6:30 p.m. their time. And right now, it's on pretty much any news channel that you could find that they are waiting to they've selected the new pope. And right now, we're just waiting to find out who will succeed Pope Francis. And again, as I mentioned earlier, regardless of any beliefs. It's a historic moment, and it's really, very it's sort of, it feels like you're watching history unfold before your eyes, but in a good way. I think a lot of people, especially in our generation, we have witnessed history in not so good ways. So when we get to witness a historic moment that is good and positive, that's a good thing. That's something to sort of cherish, because we have witnessed a lot of things in our lives that are not so great. So the times that we get to celebrate, definitely do celebrate. Speaking of celebrating, the Buffalo Bandits are heading to the National Lacrosse League Finals for the 5th straight season. The Bandits defeated the Vancouver Warriors 9-3 in Game 2 up in Vancouver. Or I'm looking at Game 1. So clearly, as you can tell, Matt is not 100% on his game. Let me tell you, breaking news about the Pope and talking about sports at the same time, not an easy task, So, but we're rolling with it. So 9-3 was the final score in Game 1 as the Bandits defeated the Warriors at home. And in Game 2 up in Vancouver, the Bandits won that game 11-9. So Dane Smith got a power play goal early in the first minute and a half to put the Bandits up 1-0. Ian McKay made it 2-0. McKay has been unbelievable this year. 2 goals by the Warriors late first quarter ended up tying the game at the end of the first 15 minutes. Riley Lowen got that second goal. This is actually a cool story. Riley Lowen missed Game 1 in Buffalo because him and his wife, he missed Game 1 for the birth of his first child, and playing in his first game as a new father ends up scoring a goal, which is definitely kind of cool, even in a losing effort. Second quarter, Chase Frazier gave Buffalo the lead early. Adam Charlambides tied it right back up for Vancouver. Back-to-back Ian McKay goals later in the quarter secured the hat trick. Buffalo up 5-3 before Keegan Ball scored in the final 20 seconds of the first half. Buffalo leads 5-4 end of the first half. Third quarter, Vancouver scores on each of their first 2 possessions to take a 6-5 lead, but then Tehoka Nanticoke answers right back to tie it up at 6. Charlambides gets the hat trick for Vancouver, and Keegan Ball follows that up less than a minute later. Bandits trailing 8-6, but Chris Cloutier gets a power play goal with 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. Bandits trail 8-7 heading into the fourth, and then the offense was on at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Dane Smith scores less than a minute into the fourth to tie the game. Chase Frazier scores to put the Bandits up 9-8, and then Chris Cloutier, less than a minute after that, gives the Bandits a 10-8 lead. Marcus Claridge scores with 10.5 to go in the fourth to cut it to 10-9. It remained that score for a while, and then Chase Frazier scored one of the best goals I've ever seen. Frazier goes one-handed between his legs to beat Christian Del Bianco. The Bandits win it 11-9 and advance to the NLL Finals for the 5th straight year. Of course, that goes all the way back to 2019 because the 2020 and 2021 playoffs were not held due to COVID-19. The Bandits made it to the finals in 2019, losing to Calgary. 2022, they lost to Colorado. 2023, beat Colorado and then beat Albany last year. Interesting stat, too. Since then, since 2019, the Bandits are undefeated in the playoffs against every opponent except for the Colorado Mammoth. The only playoff game. So let me recap that. So since their 2019 finals loss to Calgary, the Bandits in the playoffs in 2022, they swept the Toronto Rock in the semifinals, and then in the finals, they lost to the Colorado Mammoth in 3. In 2023, they swept the Rock in the semifinals and beat Colorado in 3. Still lost one game that series. They lost game 2 in Colorado, but they won that series in 3. Last year, they beat Georgia, and they had won first-round games, too. They beat Rochester in the first round in 2023 in the single game elimination. And they won in 2022, and I'm trying to remember who they beat. But last year, they beat Georgia in the first round in overtime in the single elimination, swept Toronto again in the semifinals, and then last year in the finals, swept Albany. So they have not lost a playoff game against an opponent that was not the Colorado Mammoth since 2019, and the Bandits are not facing the Colorado Mammoth in the finals. So, of course, the Bandits beat the San Diego Seals in the first round game. They have now swept the Vancouver Warriors in the semifinals, and the Bandits will be facing either the Saskatchewan Rush or the Halifax Thunderbirds in the NLL Finals. Their series is a little bit later. Theirs is a little bit different. So in the NLL playoffs, it's best of three. As the higher seeded team, you get the choice of whether you want to have a 1-1-1 series structure or a 1-2. And what I mean by that is you can either do like what the Bandits did, which is traditionally done, you're at home game 1, on the road game 2, and if you would be at home for game 3 if necessary. Or you can choose to go on the road for the first game of the series, and then you have games 2 and, if needed, 3 both at home. So you could, have a chance to win the series at home even if you swept. That's what the Rush decided to do. So game 1 of that series was in Halifax last weekend. It was on Saturday. Saskatchewan won that game 16-7. Game 2 is in Saskatchewan on Saturday night at 9:30. And then if Halifax wins that game to force a game 3, that will be played on Sunday at 8 p.m. again in Saskatchewan. The winner will face the Bandits in the NLL Finals. Game 1 of the finals is next Friday, a week from tomorrow, in Buffalo. So the finals will be like that. The finals will be game 1 in Buffalo, game 2 in either Halifax or Saskatchewan, and then game 3, if needed, would also be in Buffalo. So the Bandits are moving on again. Some individual players were named there were some finalists for awards. Dane Smith is a finalist for NLL MVP. Matt Vince is a finalist for NLL Goaltender of the Year. And play-by-play announcer John Gertler is a finalist for the Tom Borelli Media Person of the Year, which, of course, is named after former Buffalo News reporter Tom Borelli. And the one that is missing, that I am shocked about, absolutely beyond flabbergasted, how in the wide world is Ian McKay not a finalist for Transition Player of the Year? That does not make any remote sense to me. 37 goals, which was second on the team, 54 points. He recorded 94 loose ball recoveries, only 16 penalty minutes, forced 27 forced 12 turnovers, which was the 4th most on, again, a team that is going to the championship finals. I don't understand what more Ian McKay would have needed to do to be a finalist. In my mind, I thought he had it locked up. But I'm absolutely shocked that Ian McKay is not a finalist for Transition Player of the Year. I think that's a mistake. No disrespect to the players who are finalists. I think it's a mistake. I think there's absolutely no reason that McKay should not be a finalist. And to be completely honest, McKay may win playoff MVP if the Bandits win the whole thing. I really think as of right now, it's between him and Matt Vince for sure. We'll see how the finals go. If Vince has an unbelievable finals, if Vince plays the way he did, he didn't have as good of a game 2. If he plays the way he did against San Diego and in game 1 of the Vancouver series, it'll probably be Vince. But if Ian McKay if there's some goals scored, and if McKay continues to play at his pace, I honestly think Ian McKay would probably be named Finals MVP, and he would absolutely deserve it. And both players are the reason why Buffalo is where they're at right now. So I'm going to take a short break and then come back with the final segment of the year. Going to break down my top 10 sports moments of the year and highlight some seniors who are going to be graduating. Thanks for listening to the semester finale of Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports. Again, breaking news for anyone who is just tuning in to the show. The conclave in the Vatican has elected the next pope. Right now, we are just waiting for the pope to be announced. The white smoke has risen above the Sistine Chapel, and right now we are just waiting to see who that new pope is. You can follow along with that on pretty much any news outlet. The breaking news continues to flow, and this actually is related to sports, as the Pittsburgh Pirates have announced that they are firing their manager, Derek Shelton. Pittsburgh, this actually happens after the Pirates are swept in a 3-game series by my St. Louis Cardinals out in the Gateway City. But Shelton has been fired as for right now. Bench coach Don Kelly will take over. Special thank you to my mom for sending me that because I was not aware of that. I had not seen that flash across my screen yet. I guess, too busy talking about my favorite sports moments of the year and shouting out our seniors and watching the Vatican live stream, which is an interesting trio on Big Blue Sports. But you know what? That's why people tune into live radio, because you never know what you're going to get. It's kind of like Forrest Gump in that way. So as per always, we'll do senior shout-outs last. So my top 10 sports moments of the 2024-2025 school year. We'll start off with number 10. I genuinely, in the least sarcastic way possible, it was so hard to come up with any Sabres moments for this list. And I'm not even just being sarcastic when I say that. I'm genuinely so fully serious. I sat at my desk for 20 minutes trying to come up with a Sabres moment for this list, and I couldn't come up with one. I really honestly couldn't. So the best I could do is I was in person for 2 shootout wins this year, a game against Calgary in November and against the Capitals in January. So that's all the Sabres get, because I literally couldn't think of anything else for them. My number 9 favorite sports moment of the year is the Cinderella run of my March Madness bracket. So I've been doing brackets since 2013. I remember the first year I did one with my dad. It was that year because my dad correctly picked that Louisville would win the tournament. And there's been times where I've had solid brackets. There's been times, I had a 3-year stretch where the team I picked to win the whole thing made it to the championship game and lost. That was Wisconsin in 2015, North Carolina in 2016, and Gonzaga in 2017. I've also had years where my championship pick is lost in the first round, like Virginia in 2018 or Auburn in 2024. This year, I picked Auburn again to win it this year, as they were the number 1 overall seed. They ended up making it to the Final Four and losing to the eventual national champion Florida. This year was an interesting tournament. A lot of chalk, a lot of higher seeds winning. Not really a lot of major upsets. A few teams got close, but really not a whole lot of upsets, and that's, I think, kind of signaling a trend in college basketball. But my March Madness bracket was, I only got 2 games wrong out of the entire round of 64, and I think I only got 2 wrong in the round of 32 as well. So that was cool. My bracket was doing very well. I had 3 out of my 4 teams in the Final Four, which was awesome. I had 2 out of 4. Yeah, I had 2 out of 4, which is not bad. I suppose it's not terrible. So yeah, my bracket was fun while it lasted. Speaking of basketball, number 8 is going way back to mid-fall, when Fredonia's basketball team almost pulled off an insane upset against Division I University at Buffalo. I was not watching the game. I had other things going on, and our sports director, Mitch Arusi, texted me and said, "Are you watching the Fredonia game? We're beating UB 25-7 right now." And so I tuned in, and they held the lead for a while, ultimately lost it. We're not able to win, but a very close game, which was broadcast on ESPN+, which was cool. Number 7, we're going to Bills season. There's a handful of Bills moments on here. Tyler Bass's 61-yard field goal to beat the Miami Dolphins. Anytime the Bills beat Miami, it's really special for me. It's like the best. But Tyler Bass, who had missed some kicks, especially the playoff game against Kansas City last year, and, Bass had been kind of maligned, and he gets called upon for a 61-yarder to beat the Bills' biggest rival, and he drills it. It was awesome. So cool to see. Number 6. This was a game. Number 6, we're talking Bandits. This was a game the Bandits lost. It was on February 15th at home against the San Diego Seals. The Bandits lost that game in overtime. It was their first loss of the year. But face-off specialist Connor Farrell, a fan favorite, scored his first career NLL goal. And I told my friend, I said, if the Sabres were in the Stanley Cup final and scored a goal, I don't think KeyBank Center would be as loud as it just was when Farrell scored in this regular season game. I mean, it sounded like that brand new roof that Terry's such a big fan of was going to blow off the building. It was unbelievably loud. I jumped up in the air so high, and when I came down, my knee slammed against the back of the chair in front of me, and I was holding my knee for the next 5 minutes. It was absolutely worth it. Now we're into the top 5. Number 5, Jalen Brunson hitting the 3 to win the series against the Detroit Pistons. I jumped up onto my chair when this happened. I was very excited. Nick's still going in the playoffs, and I got to go quick. Number 4, Josh Allen's game-sealing touchdown run against the Kansas City Chiefs on 4th and 2. I was in a meeting when this touchdown happened. In the meeting, I was getting rather frustrated, and Allen ran for that touchdown, and it's the only time the Bills have ever scored a touchdown to lower my blood pressure. Number 3, the Bandits advancing to the NLL Finals for the 5th consecutive year, beating the Vancouver Warriors in a 2-game sweep, going for their 3rd straight championship. Number 2, the Bills' divisional round win over the Baltimore Ravens. I went out on my back porch and did snow angels with my dad, my sister, and my dog after the Bills won this game. I ran laps around the house with my mom. It was really cool. And my number 1 sports moment of the year, nothing could top Alumni Weekend at the end of last fall, with being on the call for 2 Fredonia hockey wins, as well as Charles Barkley being in Fredonia. I mean, you cannot top that. It is still my background on my phone. There's no way you could top meeting Charles Barkley, of course. So that's my top 10 sports moments of 24-25. In the final minute of the show this year, I want to thank some seniors who are going to be graduating, who have had such an impact on me and everything. First, I want to thank some e-board members here at the radio station who are graduating. Our general manager, Elena Fitzgerald, our business manager, Justin Malinowski, our WDVL program director, Frosty Tobar, chief engineer, Brian Valencia, and our ad sales manager, Scott Bassett. I want to thank you all for the fine work that you've done for this radio station. It definitely does not go unnoticed. General station members, I want to thank Regan Jackson, Kerry Hawkins, Jonathan Hagan, and Lee Pye for all that they have done for this station. I also want to thank Laurel Elliott and Liam Cerrone, who have just been great people to hang out with and talk to. I'm also over at The Leader. I am the sports editor, but I'm going to be taking over as editor-in-chief. And I want to thank our graduating e-board members, Abby Miller, our editor-in-chief, Abby Jacobson, our news editor, Drew Pollack, our photo editor, Becca Torncello, our sports photographer, Sebastian Montalban, our community relations coordinator, and the last person that I want to thank is our managing editor at the paper, who is one of my very best friends, one of my favorite people in this world who is graduating, Dan Quagliana. I want to give a huge thank you and a huge shout out. I appreciate everything that all of you have done. Thank you all for what has been a phenomenal year of Big Blue Sports. I will be back next year for my senior year. Thank you all for tuning in this year and for the last 3 years, and we will catch you all in the fall. Have a great summer, everyone, and we'll catch you then. Bye now.